TorahCafe.com.
Tonight's topic is we're going to go through a basic overview of davening. And when we say davening, when we say prayer, we're going to talk specifically tonight about the morning prayer, Shacharis, what it's all about. So we said in the first class of this series, the human being was created through divine breath. The human being wants nothing more than to reconnect with its source. It wants to be a part, it wants to be involved, it wants to reestablish this relationship with God. And that's done through prayer. In every relationship, there's the giver and the receiver. In fact, if you think of anything in creation, God made the world also in this structure. Every giver has a receiver to balance it out. The sun gives light as a giver. It has a moon at night which gives light as the receiver. Everything has balance. There's the giver and receiver. In truth, the spiritual underlay of male and female, male energy and female energy, male and female are a physical manifestation of this principle as well. So the male and female energies, male being the giver, female being the receiver, and again, even the organs of the male and the female attest, the male being the giver, the female being the receiver. So when we pray, we're on the receiving end. We're asking to be the receiver. We're asking that God bestow His bounty upon us. We're asking Him to be the giver, us down here to be the receiver. This is why, as a preface, in the Siddur, God is referred to as He. God's not a man, and God's not a woman. God's neither. God is above the idea of gender. So why do we call Him a He? Because in context of prayer, we're asking Him to be the giver, the bestower, which is the masculine energy. The way we relate to it is masculine. When God is described as being present here on earth, on what's usually the receiving end, it's called the Shekhinah. Shekhinah is a feminine. So, is a feminine reference to that godly energy. It's not, the Siddur was made by those, archaic rabbis who were so chauvinistic. Nothing to do. We're asking God to be the bestower. We're asking Him in this context. He's the bestower. He takes on a role of male energy as the giver, and so we refer to Him as He. Simple as that. In the Psalms, King David says, "And I am prayer." I am prayer. King David is saying, prayer is not something that I do. Prayer is something that I am. King David's all-encompassing consciousness was prayer. He was always singing, pleading, praising, or confessing to God. Prayer is called a ladder. Prayer is compared to a ladder. If you look on your sheets, we have a verse from the book of Genesis. It talks about Jacob and his dream. It says, "And Jacob encountered the place, laid down to sleep there. He dreamed, and there was a ladder standing on earth, and its top reached the heavens. And God's angels were going up and going down on it, and God was standing over him." This ladder in the dream is what we compare prayer to. That as the prayer service, as written in the Siddur, continues, as it progresses, until it reaches the Shmona Esrei, the Amidah, the pinnacle of the prayer, it's like ascending a spiritual ladder. God is infinite. Correct? God being infinite, the only way that we can relate to Him, the only way that we can have a relationship with Him is through self-abnegation. nullifying ourselves, being a non-existence. The Chedushei Harim, famous sage, not too long ago, said that God is wherever he's allowed to be, wherever you let him. A person that's full of himself has no room for God. The idea of the prayer service, each step along the way, is becoming more of a non-entity, a non-existence. Getting rid of the ego, getting rid of the you, the personal you, and putting it instead as becoming a vessel to allow God into yourself. So each part in the prayer service, each step on the spiritual rungs that we make, is a step closer to non-existence, to eradicating the ego. Prayer is the tool to get rid of the ego, to make you selfless. This is how we become a vessel to receiving God's bounty, through non-existence, through not being my own entity. There are a few rungs on this spiritual ladder. We're going to divide davening, we're going to divide the prayer service into 4 main sections. The first section is the morning blessings and the sacrifices. The second section is what's called the Psukei de Zimra, the verses of praise. The third climb on the ladder is the Shema and its blessings. And the height, the pinnacle, the crux of the prayer service is the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei. After the Shemona Esrei, there is more davening. That's already climbing down the ladder. That's already getting back into the regular world. Prayer has also been described and compared to entering into the temple in Jerusalem, the Beis HaMikdash. You start out, you're on the Temple Mount, and as prayer continues, you make your way to the courtyard. And as prayer continues, you make your way into the Kodesh, the section that's called Holy. And then the last bit, the Shemona Esrei, you're in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, standing face to face with God. The Amidah, you're standing face to face with God. So blessings and sacrifices. Then you have the Psukei de Zimra, the verses of praise. Now the verses of praise, we say, our sages taught, that it's appropriate, before a person requests anything from God, it's appropriate to praise him first. The verses of praise are songs and praises. If you look, it's mostly made up of Tehillim, mostly made up of psalms. And they're all songs and praises of the natural world, how every creature knows its maker. Knows and identifies its maker. So first you talk about how everything in the world knows its maker. How come I don't? It's meant to inspire a person to think about, if everything else is realizing its purpose in the world, its place in the world, how come I don't? In Kabbalah, the Psukei de Zimra, the verses of praise, are referred to as the verses of cutting. Cutting. Meaning that they cut away all obstructions and distractions, that when you get into the more holy and intense parts of davening, you're already outside of the realm of obstructions, of distractions, and you're ready to really zero in and concentrate on where you are and what you're doing. If you notice, as the prayer service continues, you get to the Shema and its blessings that precede it and are after it. What does it talk about over there? The blessings before the Shema talk about how even the highest of angels nullify themselves in front of God. So first you start off in this world. First you start off, all the creations know their maker. Everyone knows, all the creatures, all the animals, all the plants, everything knows its maker. Why don't I? How come I can't? Then you get to the angels. And the angels are also nullifying themselves in front of God. Well, if they can do it, why am I not doing it? And then you make it to the Shemona Esrei, the Holy of Holies, the highest part of the ladder, where you're standing face to face with God. Now, this is not only a theoretical or philosophical idea. This concept actually plays a role in Jewish law. How so? A person who's praying the Shemona Esrei, a person who's in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, in the middle of the Amidah, if I see them praying, I'm not allowed to walk in front of them very close. I have to be a certain distance away for two reasons. Number one, so they can concentrate. Being in front of God is not something to be taken lightly. So they have to be able to concentrate. I can't be doing something that's going to distract them. But secondly, and even more interesting, is that it says, it's brought down in Halacha, the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch brings it down, the Mishnah Berurah brings it down. What's the reason that I can't walk in their immediate area? Is because, on a certain level, the divine presence is right there in front of them. And it's not respectful for me to be intruding where the divine presence is standing. After the Shemona Esrei, we say the Shir Shel Yom, we say Ashrei, V'Latzion, the Shir Shel Yom, Enkel Ekeinu, and we come down the ladder. As the prayer service progresses, there's less that a person is allowed to do to interrupt their prayers. During the blessings and the sacrifice at the beginning of the prayer service, a person is allowed to stop and speak to somebody if they need to. Then once we get to the Psukei de Zimra, the verses of praise, the person is not allowed to interrupt. You can't even respond, Baruch Hu Baruch Shmo. Only things immediately present in the davening. You're becoming less of an existence. There is no outside person anymore. There is no conversation. There is nothing outside of this. There's nothing outside of this communion with God. Then as we get to the Shema and its blessings, we're allowed to speak even less. We can only interrupt for very few things. And then when we get to the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, not only are we not allowed to say anything, or we can't even gesture or look at anything but our siddur, think about God in front of us. So as the davening progresses, as the prayer service, we are becoming less of the ideal anyway, we're becoming less of an existence, less of an ego. More nullified, more of a vessel, more of a conduit for God. The objective of prayer is that there should be a residue, a remnant of the prayer that lasts with you throughout the rest of the day. A person who thinks that they had a really great prayer service and then lives the rest of the day like, you know what? How effective, how good was their prayer really? How much sincerity, how much life did they put into it? How much was their prayer a service? The previous Rebbe writes in Likutei Diburim, the essence of prayer is revealed in that which comes after it. We climb up the ladder up until the Amidah. We climb down the ladder at the second half of the prayer service, back into reality, hoping that when we were up at the top of the ladder, we'll take back something. Something made sense to us. Something meant something to us. Something affected us. And it'll change the rest of our day. Prayer is always meant to be spoken. We don't think our prayers. We always have to speak our prayers. Even when we're praying the Amidah and we don't speak it out loud, we whisper it. It always has to be spoken. And why is that? Human being exists in three realms: thought, speech, action. If a person has good thoughts, that leads to good speech. Good speech leads to good action. One affects the other. It's a domino effect. If a person just thinks their prayers, it's contained within themselves. They didn't express it in the world. They didn't make it possible. They didn't give it the added strength to make it affect the rest of their day. So you have to bring those thoughts into positive speech, which after prayers will lead to positive actions. Speaking makes it more real for us. Speaking brings it down to reality. We're speaking not only to God, we're speaking to ourselves. So the essence of prayer is that which comes after it. This week's meditation, I'd like everybody to think about acquiring a siddur and praying on a normal basis. At least go slow. Don't take on everything at once. But some of the parts of the prayer service, of the formalized prayer service, especially the morning service, which is starting your day out, and think about what we're saying. Think about the meanings of the word. Pray in English. Doesn't matter. God understands. Go step by step, and every once in a while, add on a little bit more, and a little bit more. And through doing this, we should make ourselves into vessels, make ourselves into conduits that are more easily able to contain the bounty of God. And everyone should have, through the sincerity and strength and effort that they're putting in their prayers, all of them should be answered in their proper time.